Here There Be Monsters by Gheistling. Dreden grabbed his sister Nera's hand, yanking her sharply down the tunnel. Without turning to her, he hissed, "We have to keep running, Nera. The monster is coming. I can hear it." Nera clutched his hand with all the might her child body could muster, and sniffled as she replied, "I'm so tired, Dree. And hungry. We haven't had anything to eat in so long." "I know, Nera. I know. I'm tired and hungry too. But the monster's going to catch up to us if we stop and rest. You know what Memzo and Pazzi said. If we see a monster, we have to run. It's the only way to survive," Dreden said. The two children moved in silence, still sprinting through the low, narrow tunnels that ran through his family's crippled ship, the Neza. They could hear the monsters behind them crawling down the tunnels, its cybernetic armor scraping on the narrow tunnels, bellowing, screeching. Dreden didn't know how much longer they could keep going. Things on the Neza had gone from bad to worse to apocalyptic. First, their dark drive had broken down just as they got into the Diomedes asteroid cluster. This made mining impossible, but their parents had been sure they could fix the dark drive. The two children were asleep when the dark drive melted down, its containment field failing and causing a massive eruption that tore through the ship. Their Memzo, Gabi, had made it back to them in a cloud of asteroid smoke, smelling of burning insulation and melting metal. She had stayed just long enough to force them into the aft section of the ship, where she sealed them in. She had signed that she loved them through the viewport, before the ammo rushed out of the ruptured ship, carrying their last parent into the empty. Dree had managed to activate the distress beacons, just like his Pazzi had shown him, but he knew it was likely pointless. The Diomedes weren't close to any interstellar shipping lanes, and the Alliance didn't help shipwrecks unless they had some kind of value. More importantly, the monsters controlled the Diomedes. While he didn't know the details, Drew knew there was a war being waged between the Galactic Alliance and the monsters, and that the Alliance was losing. The monsters were winning against all odds, killing Alliance soldiers by the thousands. Dree's family hoped to just avoid the conflict, both the Alliance and the monsters. Dree's father had said the Alliance were just as bad as the monsters, if not worse. They just wanted to live in peace, and mining is what they did best, especially the amnoworms used in the pathways. Then, this morning, the monsters had found them. They boarded the crippled ship while Dreden had taken Nera and ran. They'd been running for hours, the monsters behind them so massive they filled the surface tunnels from side to side, even crawling. The monsters roared and bellowed ceaselessly behind them. As they came around one of the corners ahead, Dree saw one of the monsters at the far end of the tunnel. The thing had massive armor plates seemingly screwed into its body, and its head was covered in a dark synth steel helmet. The face was pure blackness, with a grinning skull staring back at him. The immense thing was terrifying. When it spied Dreden and Nera, it roared at them and tried to rush down the tunnel at them. The tight quarters slowed it down, allowing the children to dart down an intersection just ahead. The monster roared behind them, its frenzied howls almost seeming like words. Dreden led his sister down tunnel after tunnel, but the monsters seemed to be everywhere. Dree finally realized they were being herded, and he knew where. The shuttle bay was the only place large enough for the monsters to gather, to use their mammoth strength and size. Wait, Nera. I need to think. The monsters are trying to trick us," said Dreden, pulling his sister to a halt in the dark tunnels. "I'm scared, Dree," whimpered Nera. Dree handed her the last protein bar, knowing the need for rationing had ended. "Here, Neza. Eat this while we rest." As the young girl devoured the bar, Dreden stared around the dark, empty tunnel. Try as he might, he couldn't think of any way to escape. The ship was too damaged to allow much room to maneuver, and the monsters had them cornered. Finally, Dree rose to his feet. "We have to keep going, Nera. We can't give up. Pazzi said we always stick together. We always keep going. Just remember. I love you." The little girl rose to her feet and grasped Dree's hand. "I'm so scared, Dree. Are we going to get away?" Dree smiled down at his little sister and said, "Of course, Neza. We just have to stay together." Clutching his sister's hand, Dree did the only thing he knew to do. He guided her directly to the shuttle bay. If this was the end, he meant to make it quick at least. No more running, Dreden thought. As they drew close to the bay, the children could hear the monsters. Their oversized footfalls made the floor grates tremble and shake. The monstrous bellows and roars echoed down the tunnels. The lights grew brighter and brighter. finally blossoming into a blinding glare as the children stumbled into the shuttle bay. As Nera clung to him, Dreden defiantly drew himself to his full height. "I'm not frightened of you monsters. Do your worst," he shouted, raising the tiny multi-tool his Pazzi had given him on his naming day. Dreden and Nera screamed in unison as a figure barreled into them, knocking them off their feet. As their eyes adjusted to the harsh light of the bay, the children stared in astonishment at their mother. Her helmet was off, exposing the soft golden fur that covered her rodent-like features. Dreden didn't think he had ever seen anything more beautiful than the 4 warm brown eyes of his mother staring down at him. "How, Memzo?" stammered Dreden over his sister's squeals. "I was sucked out with the Atmo, but my suit wasn't damaged. I floated near the ship conserving oxygen as best as I could. They found me, and when I told them my children were inside, they sent in soldiers. They've been looking for you this whole time, but you kept running," his Memzo replied. Dreden looked around the room in astonishment at the immense armored forms surrounding him. He could see now that their black synth steel armor wasn't bolted to their flesh. It was bolted to heavy exoskeletons that supported what looked more like tools than weapons. He could see drills, cutting wheels, torches, many things he couldn't even guess at. The monsters were trying to help us? They weren't chasing us? They were screaming, roaring at us, Dreden said incredulously. His mother smiled down at him and replied, "Their voices are much deeper than ours, and ours are much higher than theirs. They can't even hear our voices without a translator. They weren't roaring at you to frighten you. They were just trying to get you to come to them." One of the huge soldiers stepped forward and removed their helmet in a hiss of gas. The face was smooth, with the only fur being on top of the head. The sides were shaved to the skin, the top a long tangle. The soldier dropped to one knee. Even kneeling, the soldier towered over the tiny Quarrens. She pressed a button implanted under the smooth, furless skin of her throat and said, "You should be proud, Gabi. We haven't ever had to chase someone this hard just to rescue them." Her voice rumbled, but underneath it, Dreden could understand her. "Why though? Why would you rescue us?" asked Dreden. "The universe is at war, youngling, but I'm part of the Terran Deep Space Search and Rescue Squads. Humans might seem like monsters to you, but we save who we can, when we can. I'm just glad we found you guys in time," the human replied. Will you be selling us then?" whimpered Nera. The huge soldier reached down and gently touched the tiny Quarren child's head, brushing her golden fur. "Humans don't believe in slavery, or whatever the Galactic Alliance calls it these days. Your mother has agreed to relocate to one of our mining facilities. The pay's good, and we have a small colony of Quarrens on site. Your kind skills are prized in the deep mines." Dreden spoke into the silence. "When can we go?"